Welcome to Discourse 22 with Sajjad Ayub and Shaykh Ebrahim Schuitma. We're discussing humility. You say that there's no one more honored than someone who disavows importance. Would that mean all politicians are doomed to abasement and disgrace? And why don't we always see that?
Well, I mean, that's making an assumption of politicians, which may or may not be true. Maybe like I suppose anything is possible. I mean, you can have a politician who is genuinely there to make a contribution and not to be seen. That has to be possible. I mean, it's just logically possible. It's a multiverse with infinite possibilities. So this peculiar thing of a unself-interested politician may just happen. You never know. So I'd rather go to the beginning of the question and to look at this whole thing of why is it that people love truly humble people. Why do people love them? Why are they such attractive beings? And I think it's useful initially to understand what humility is. Humility is not the same thing as groveling. Right. So somebody once told me, I can't remember who it was years ago, they said to me, listen, humility isn't thinking of yourself less. No, humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less. In other words, it's not to have a demeaned view of yourself. It's basically not to make your status significant, to make that less of an object of thought, So this sort of practiced humble demeanor, the sort of hunched shoulders and the kind of downcast eye and sort of like, that's not humility. So what is humility? Humility is to understand that in any situation that you're in, that significance is to be granted to the other, that the self has no significance. And the way to understand this, as we spoke before about your being like a reducing valve to something that sits behind it, that emanates through you. And it has been implied in our discussion that this reducing valve has taken quite a while to construct. I mean, it's not just an ordinary thing, it's taken all events from the Big Bang to be woven together to produce the scaffolding that the light of your attention can sit on and view the world and emanate to the world, So your being is a viewing point. It's a place that sees, that looks out on the world. And as we've already indicated before, when it looks out at the world, and it sees things as they are. In other words, it doesn't hide inside a house. It goes out into a mountain to see things that are. It's amazed. It's gobsmacked. All that you have to do in a starry night, go out and look at the stars. That's amazing. It's just like, so in other words, you are made to be amazed with not this side of their seeing, that side of the seeing, not the one who's seeing, but what is seen. Your being has been designed to be fascinated with, to be amazed with, to be enchanted with anything other than yourself. You've not been made to find yourself interesting. You've not been made to look at yourself. And the best sort of metaphor to understand this is how your eyes work, because your eyes are a metaphor for your attention. Your eyes aren't made to look at yourself. It would be horrible. It's like a zombie movie. Your eyes roll back. You've been made to be looking out. Now, when you do that, when you are the one who is amazed with, rather than the one who's trying to be seen, but the one who sees, the one who's fascinated, not the one who's trying to be fascinating, when you do that, you're doing what your first instruction was as a human being, because you were made so that he wanted to be known. So you were made to witness his magnificence. And that's what you're doing when you're a maid, you know. So you're basically quintessentially human. You are demonstrating, you are living the essence of being human. That is an immensely beautiful thing. And that is something that people find extraordinarily attractive. You know, somebody who's truly delighted at life, other people find amazingly attractive, because it's like they found a fountain of freshness, of emanation that is real. It's rooted. You know, it does what it's supposed to do. And the opposite, when you find somebody who's hooded, who's doing the equivalent of rolling their eyes into the back, and when they're wanting to be seen, is the degree to which they are deeply objectionable. I mean, there's nothing more ugly than somebody who finds themselves interesting. You know, I mean, Shaykh Muhammad al-Habib said that in one of his qasaid. He said, you know, don't be fascinated with what's in the self. You'll only find that which is ugly. You know. Also the true princes of existence are the ones who grant significance. And I mean, these are the true. This is where true authority sits. You know, one would think that it's the king who's the significant one. You know, the majestic one, the one that everybody acclaims. So I look at them and yeah, he's the king. You know, he's the significant one. But you know, where does the real authority sit? With the king or with the kingmaker? Surely it's with the kingmaker. So it's not with the one that claims the significance that the real authority sits. It's with the one who grants the significance. So your strong suit isn't to be the one who's on center stage, competing, trying to be seen. Your strong suit is the one who vacates the stage and does the seeing, not wanting to be seen.
Why do you say that the station of silence is preeminent over the station of speech?
I mean, this has to be experientially true. It is a build on what we've just said, but it's also experientially true. Have you ever had that sinking feeling? You're trying to convince somebody of something, and they're keeping quiet and they're skeptical. And the more you try and vindicate, it's like you literally feel like you're in quicksand, and you're just being sucked deeper and deeper into this nightmare. And they're just sitting there deadpan, you know. Doesn't that demonstrate that the one who is silent has preeminence over the one who speaks? Because all that you have to do, really all that you have to do, is to either grant it significance or trivialize it. It's the only thing that sits with you. What sits with the person who's talking is they've got to convince you that what they are saying is significant and not trivial, is true and not false. You know, so clearly, who's got to do the work here? I mean, it's the one who's talking who's got to do the work. Who's the one who designates that this is either true or not true? The guy who does nothing is just looking. He's just, you know. So from every point of view, speech is weaker than silence. Silence has preeminence over speech. The person who is speaking is obviously the one who is seeking to be seen. I mean, he's literally taking something that's inside him, the meaning that he's got in his being, and he's putting it out to be observed in the world. He's seeking his insight to be seen, you know? I mean, the person who's listening isn't doing anything like that. I mean, they're not standing out to be seen. They're not trying to appear. You know, they're not having to do any work. They're just aligning with that which is between. So you're trying to tell me something. Actually, it's right now, it's the other way around. I'm trying to tell you something. There's something in my head that I'm trying to somehow, and God, this is a nightmare. I'm not only am I trying to push it out of my head into the interspace between me and you, I'm actually trying to force it into a little electronic box that's going to transmute it through a lot of blips all around the planet to the other side of the world, come out of your screen, and then And all that you have to do is either nod or look bored. That's all you have to do. So who's the vulnerable one here? Do you understand? Clearly, I mean, the one who listens has the authority. The one who speaks, you know, I see a lot of leadership work, and what I find most often with people who are in charge of others, they talk too much. I'm going to go to them and say, "Shut up, for heaven's sake!" You know, you're not demonstrating how powerful you are by blabbing on the whole time. You're actually demonstrating exactly the opposite. Don't be the one who always takes center stage. Do some listening. Don't be the one who's always got an opinion to promulgate. That's your real power. Rests in being the one who listens, not the one who speaks. You know, being the one who steps back, not the one who engages, who steps in. Being the one who enables, who allows, not the one who commands. Yeah.
We have a tendency to talk all the time to ourselves, to have opinions, to feel this gets in the way of us having real insights.
I think that is absolutely true. I mean, think about this. How often, if something's a real insight, that means you didn't think of it before. Because otherwise it wouldn't have struck as, hell, that's interesting. It wouldn't have been an insight if you already knew it, if you had seen it before. So an insight has this element of freshness to it, which basically means to say an insight by definition will challenge your prejudices. So if it confirms your prejudice, then it's not an insight. An insight is, I've not seen that before. So what goes on in our heads, our constant repeating of our prejudices and our preconceptions and our views of the world is really a dumbing down mechanism. I mean, it reduces what there is to see. It's a little bit like wearing really thick sunglasses that have got layers of accretion, like mud, sort of white layers and layers of mud. Yeah. And so what my parents have done, not only have they put these glasses on me and they've put mud on it, but they've also made a couple of tiny scratches, which is, this is what you're allowed to see. And I look out at the world and that's what I see. And it's not a lot of it's quite grainy, and it's certainly not very exciting. It's not very interesting. But this is the world as it is. And then one day maybe a catastrophe hits me, which is like the equivalent of somebody being outside in a rainstorm. But I mean, bear in mind, this mud is like really thick. It's like quite caked, And so I get completely drenched with rain, and some of this mud now washes off and it's all over me, and I'm not that pretty anymore after. It's like, but what's amazing is that these little scratches that I saw through before, I can see a lot more than that now, and in fact, what I can see, most of what I'm seeing now is not inside the scratch. It's outside of the scratch. It's still very blurry because, I mean, there's still quite a lot of muck on the spectacles, but then I get another sort of deluge experience, another little catastrophe that sort of challenges my assumptions about how things are. And a little bit more gets washed off. Our aim on this path is to create the conditions where eventually you've got a clean set of lenses. And what you will then see will be so amazing, it'll be good enough for you. So we have an expression for this. We say that if seeing things as they are isn't good enough for you, you're not seeing things as they are.
You say that all the practices of deen are practices in humility. Please elaborate on why is this desirable anyway?
So you've been made to be amazed at him, to see he's amazing and he's extraordinary. A precondition, what makes that possible, is a viewing point from apparent smallness. So your inadequacy is part of the formula, you know. Anything that does the opposite of that, anything that makes you think that you're significant, then calls you away from your first life calling. I mean, we've got like an abstract life calling, which every human being has, and that is to be worshipful, that is to see that he's the Rabb. And then we have a particular life calling, which is how that thing translates into our own life and the contributions we should be making to life. You know, so this first thing of being the worshipful one is rooted in the assumption of not of adequacy, not of self-sufficiency, not of significance, but exactly the opposite. It is my insignificance that makes it possible for me to see his significance. It is my inadequacy that recognizes his capability. It is my poverty that recognizes his wealth. It is by my smallness that I recognize his greatness. Now, that's why genuine humility is really something that one should, it's the first condition for being properly human. If you aren't trying to pursue it, you can't be properly human. You can't do the job that you've been ascribed to by your creator. So that's why you should pursue this station of humility, you know. And also, you just know that people who are arrogant and self-important are just objectionable. But they're just ugly.
You make a great...
sorry, can I tell you a story about this?
Yeah, please. One
of the shiur that I met once said to me, he met a man who had a very big turban. And the man was describing him, he was introducing himself, and he said, I am the Grand Mufti of Odessa. And the sheikh, who remained unnamed because I might get myself into trouble, said, a lot of good that's done you. I mean, any person who does the equivalent of that, I am the professor of so and so, I'm the such and such, you know. I mean, they might have achieved that status in the world, but what they've actually done by achieving that status and congratulating themselves that they have the status is they've actually diminished themselves irrevocably in the things that really matter. It's done them no good. I'm done.
You made a great analogy with the sun and the clouds and the heart and the inner noise. Please tell us more about this.
So, right now, there's enough going on around you, immediately around you, which is so extraordinary. It should put you in an almost catatonic stupor of ecstasy. If you knew what was going on in that plant just behind you to your right, if you could actually we're given the eyes to see what was really going on right now, you know, the sort of the osmosis and the photosynthesis, all this stuff happened. It's like this swirling kind of, you know, I mean, you'd either be in terror of the thing, just how it leaps out and eats you, or you'd certainly be amazed. You'd certainly find it truly significant. So you know, that's how things are. So why aren't you catatonically ecstatic? Why? If what's in front of your nose is so extraordinary, it should make you stupefied with wonder. Why aren't you in a state of wonder? Well, maybe you're not seeing the thing that's in front of your nose. And I think that is true for all of us. We're not seeing the thing that is in front of our nose. What gets in the way is that our attention gets absorbed by stuff that's not in front of our eyes, by stuff that's behind our eyes. So there's a filter that sits between you and the thing that you're seeing that is your self-talk, your internal dialogue, you know, the kind of the prejudices, the accretion of mud that's been put into you from when you were very little, that we spoke about before, like on the glasses, you know, the kind of, so you don't see the thing as it is, and then you're miserable. So you live in a world of darkness. Your inner space you experience is depressing, and as you know, very little joy, very little light. It's not because it isn't there, you're not seeing it, you're not allowing it in. You know, it's the stuff that goes on in your head is like clouds in front of the sun. You know, that amazing radiance, that extraordinary effulgence is always there, but you don't see it. You don't see it because there's stuff between you, the stuff that you're creating, clouds, internal noise, internal clouds that operate like a filter that stand between you and the world that you see. This thing of you becoming catatonically ecstatic is not a metaphor, because we know this. All Inner traditions have this equivalent of the majdub, of the person who gets completely drunk in Allah and doesn't come out of it, you know. And we all have that potential. And we might say, oh, this poor person, look at him drooling on the street corner, he's completely useless. Well, maybe he's not completely useless. Maybe he's actually the one that the whole universe has been made for. Because if you aren't sitting, in a sense, drooling on the street corner in amazement at what you're seeing, you're not seeing it. You're a somnambulant.
And how does one take away the mud from the eyes, remove the clouds, and get into that state of?
So this has been the subject of all mystical traditions, not just tasawwuf. You know, there are certain themes that get shared in all inner traditions. Mostly it is about withdrawal from your day-to-day engagement of the world. Now, that withdrawal doesn't have to be, permanent into the mountains, because clearly, I mean, if you aren't meeting people, there's not much to talk about. I mean, that's easy, you know. But then maybe you can't do the other side of the job, which is, so we've got to do two things. We've got to amanu, in other words, we've got to be amazed, we've got to see, it means belief, but it's to see the reality, and amanu salihat. So we've also got to emanate. Now, it's very difficult to emanate if you're sitting in a hole in a mountain in top of the Himalaya. Then you don't emanate. I mean, that's maybe to the cave, but so you've got to do both. So our approach to this is called tahajjud. It's called, so you can actually withdraw from your engagement with people and still live a life among people. You're fasting, you withdraw. Salah, I mean, it's very difficult to have a conversation with somebody who's in sajda. I mean, that would be a very strange conversation to have, it's kind of like, tahajjud is the same thing. You go into an inner space, you withdraw into yourself. Find out what's good, how this thing behind your eyes works. So, in fact, all of the practices of the Deen really have that effect. They have an effect of cultivating an inward gatheredness. And as people of tasawwuf, that is what we use. That's our technology. I don't think it's the only technology. You can use there are all sorts of technology ways of doing this. I think we would say, well, we're very happy with the one that we use, not wanting to compete with anybody, but we're happy with the one that we use because it allows us still to have a reasonably normal life. You know, you can still have the children and have the wife, and it's challenging, but you can do it. You know, whereas these other ways of doing this are quite extreme. I mean, and very often quite risky because they involve a deliberate courting of near-death experience.
Mm. On that note, thank you for joining us again, and Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.